Oh. Fuck. Alright, let me get back up there.
5 minutes later.
Oh. Whoa. Damn it.
20 minutes later.
Hiya. Hiya. Finally. The PS5 is out. Yeah, kinda weird to say that, and even more weird to own one of those, considering scalpers kinda ruined it for everyone. I'm not paying $2,000 for that. But the one thing that caught my attention immediately was the controller. The DualSense controller with its haptic feedback of every game so far, the controller, and even the triggers vibrating. It's another way to add more immersion to games, and for what I hear, it even rivals the Switch's HD Rumble as one of the best vibrators in a controller. That, sounded weird. So I went back into my console library looking at some games that really showed off what a controller could do, like some gimmicky control scheme or, something like that. Then I remembered about a game called Ape Escape. Ape Escape, if you're old enough to remember since they haven't made one in a while, is a series exclusive to Sony consoles where you go around catching monkey. Alright, that's the only time I'm gonna use that joke, I swear. Years ago I picked up this game at a swap meet like so many other games I have in my collection. I played it for a few minutes and then I put it down, which is weird, and I'm paid for this game, so I should at least give it the time of day, So now let's see if I was missing out, or maybe it was better that I stayed away from Ape Escape. Let's find out. First off, who developed this game? This game was developed by Japan Studios, who's most known for making anything popular on any PlayStation system ever. Seriously, I'm not exaggerating. Japan Studios was meant as a first-party studio by Sony to pump out a variety of games and to help with other studios. You may have heard of games such as this. Alright, so back to the development. Development first started up when the original DualShock controller, or rather the dual analog controller, was being developed. Sony wanted to show off what this controller can do. Now, why did Sony want a dual analog controller in the first place, and pretty much change the industry as we know it? Nintendo. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Nintendo had an analog stick at the launch at the N64. Love it or hate it, it was one of the first consoles to have an analog stick at the start, so yeah, 3D games had to have something else aside from a D-pad. So, why not just add two sticks? Someone said it's Sony, and they made it a mainstay ever since. Not counting the PSP with its little, nub. Man, this thing was weird. Alright, back to the game. So the game took about 2.5 years to develop, and it was one of the first games on the console to require a DualShock controller. Apparently it took the team a long time to figure out what they wanted to do with the controls, which, that makes sense, kind of. I mean, 3D gaming was still in its testing grounds, and yes, this game has some very unique controls, which I'll get into shortly. So, let's get into the story of the game. With an intro like that, I expected high energy, tear-jerking, deep story that will break the boundaries of games, and nope! Alright, seriously, the game has a story that's on par with a Saturday morning cartoon, which isn't that big of a deal to be honest with you. The white monkey steals a helmet that expands his knowledge and tries to take over the world by traveling through time, taking your best friend with you and mind controlling him to attack you. And then you defeat him, get your friend back, and that's about it. Usually the story rundown is a lot longer, what the f. So let's get the more important stuff out of the way, the gameplay. If you haven't noticed already, this game is a Collect-a-thon! Haven't done that in a while. So in this game, you're given a small amount of gadgets to catch these cute but destructive monkeys. Each level has a certain amount of monkeys that you need to catch and move on to the next stage. But there will always be more monkeys to catch after you leave the stage, so you're going to be doing some backtracking to get 100%. But to be honest, levels, with the exception of a few of them, aren't that big. There's only 20 levels in the game with a good amount of variety, thanks to the whole time traveling aspect of the game. You go from jungles, to castles, to some icy levels, and even modern times. There's a few things that keep the game from feeling less samey. First off, let's get into the controls, which, if you didn't know already, is something that you will either find very innovative or gimmicky. To attack, instead of hitting a button, you instead flick the right stick in any direction you want to move your gadget in question, whether that being the net, the stun baton, and so on. This way you attack in every direction no matter what. This is probably the reason why I put this game down years ago. This was something a little different for me, but I got used to it. But after the first few stages and getting some new gadgets, I found this to be a different take on the whole Collect-a-thon genre. That and the different monkeys that you try to catch. Depending on the color of the pants, the monkey in question would either attack you in some different way. Some of them are super fast and hard to catch, some of them fire guns or missiles at you, and some of them use the surroundings to make things a little bit more difficult for you. I like this a lot. Like, how would you approach a monkey with a gun? Now that's scary. It kind of takes out the mindlessness of a collect-a-thon in a way, with trying to figure out what gear you should use to approach these monkeys. But in all cases, you're going to be catching these things with your net. When you first start the game, all you're given is the net and the stun baton, which sometimes stops a monkey depending on what kind they are, I think. But the thing can also attack other enemies, which isn't the best attack to be honest with you. The range on the baton isn't the best, but if you rotate the right stick, you could do an attack where you're basically attacking on all sides. Other gadgets include a water net, which catches monkeys when you're swimming, and you can move faster while swimming as well. I kinda hate the swimming controls to be honest with you. If you're not hitting any direction, you automatically swim up, but to swim down, you hit the L3 button. Why? Hitting L3 while you're controlling yourself underwater in a limited amount of time isn't exactly the best way to go around with these controls. Alright, moving on. The monkey radar I didn't really use until late game when I was trying to get all the monkeys, but I think it's pretty useful when you're trying to find them. All you do is point the radar in a direction and it makes a noise to see how far you are to one. If you're close enough, you can actually see where the monkey is, you just have to figure out where it is. The slingshot is a slingshot, nothing special. Alright, I'm kidding. The cool thing is that you finally have a ranged attack, and you can go into a first-person mode to attack. You can also attack in the normal third-person mode, but I do not recommend this. You have to pull back on the right stick to fire it, and just doing this in this kind of perspective isn't that good. That's another thing I need to get out of the way, depth perception. This plagued so many 3D games back in the PS1, but for the uninitiated, basically it's hard to tell how far you are away from something. If you make a jump and you don't land, that might be why. Or I just suck at games. Anyways, this leads to falling down a lot of pits or very high places, having to do the same thing over and over again, like this level here. Speaking of jumping, you have the Skyflyer. This little gadget works by rotating the right stick while jumping to get a really high jump. By the way, you jump with the R1 button for some reason, which isn't that bad, but just hitting the R1 button while rotating the right stick is something to get used to. The one thing that kind of pisses me off about it is the fact that the Skyflyer has to be selected to use it. The only time I'm ever going to use the Skyflyer is when I'm in the air, so why do I have to select it? I basically have to be defenseless to use it, or sometimes I forget I have the thing selected and I end up falling down a pit with my net going round and round. Nice. The next gadget is the Super Hoop, which gives you a sort of force field, but you're also running constantly. And if you hit something, you automatically stop. I only use this if I really need to because of its shortcomings. The RC car is very situational at best. You control this RC car with the right stick, and to be honest, it's kind of hard to tell where the RC car is going since your perspective doesn't really change while using it. Also, since you're controlling it while using the right stick, it's kind of weird to do so since I'm used to the right stick being the camera control and all for games nowadays. The last gadget in the game is the Magic Punch. It's really powerful. You get this once you beat the game normally, and it's probably the best attack in the game. It has a decent amount of range, it breaks down specially marked walls, and it's really powerful. The one thing I like about all the gadgets is the way that you can select any gadget and mark them onto whatever button configuration you want with the 4 face buttons. You can quickly change the layout by hitting the gadget menu on the pause menu or hitting the select button. Speaking of the pause screen, this also shows how much you have left to catch in one level and how many Spectre coins you need to collect, which I may have forgotten to talk about. Here we go. They unlock minigames. You don't even get anything for collecting them all? That's lame. Yeah, that's kind of weird. I'm guessing you get the 100% ending if you collect all 60 of them, but I decided not to do that since you only need 40 of them to get all the minigames. Speaking of which, you have 3. Ski Kids Racing, which is your simple racing game, but you use both control sticks as a way to move around. It's okay, it's very simple, but there's a 2-player mode, which is pretty cool. Spectre Boxing, in which you use both control sticks to wiggle your arms around to fight other monkeys. Their arms look like jello or something, like, this is just weird. And Galaxy Monkey, which is a twin-stick shooter with not much variation, but I love some Smash TV, so this is fun for a few minutes. The game does have its problems outside of the controls. The vehicles are, well, they're barely in the game. You have the tank, which only shows up twice, but I do like it. You control both sticks, moving forward or backwards depending on the way you move. You fire this very powerful missile, breaking down walls, or a machine gun. The rowboat, on the other hand, well, sucks. It has the same idea for controls as the tank, just it's a lot slower to steer. It's just faster to swim, so why would I use the rowboat? These things seem either like they were wasted ideas or something that shouldn't have been in the game to begin with, since there's already better ways of doing it. The camera is, well, okay, one common thing I like to complain about in games from this era is the camera, but not being able to control the camera for this game is actually not that bad, since you have that first person mode like I mentioned before, and if you hit the L1 button, it also resets the camera. I rarely have any problem seeing where I'm going. I mean, yes, there are some leaps of faith, because for some reason you can't go into the first person mode for some areas. That's weird. but for the most part I didn't have any problems with the camera. The camera wasn't clipping through walls or bouncing around for no godforsaken reason like some games I've played. One of the big problems I have with the game though, or rather interacting with enemies, is the fact that there's knockback in this game. Now it isn't the worst thing in the world, but if you're near a pit, you're going to fall off. Now that's some bullshit right there. Also, you don't have any invincibility frames once you get hit. At least, I don't think you do. This only happened to me a few times, but if you get hit near a bunch of enemies, you're going to get hit without any recovery time and immediately lose a life. And this time right over here, the knockback and the invincibility frames fucked me over by being stuck on a wall, constantly getting hit and dying. Now, this is rare, I know, but this is still a problem, but this didn't affect the other 98% of my time playing this game, so just be aware of it when playing. Graphically, the game looks good for PS1 standards. It's colorful, each level stands out, and nothing looks the same. The music is very energetic when you first start up the game, and it doesn't stop. I gotta admit, as weird as it is, I like the soundtrack. I won't be listening to it on my way to work or anything like that, but it has a good mix of, I don't know, funk and electronic is the best way I can call it. Overall, Ape Escape was fun for what it was, but it does have some small problems that don't affect the overall gameplay, but are enough to stay noticeable. Does that make any sense? The gameplay overall is pretty fun with the variety of monkeys you need to catch and the different scenarios you get with them, the gadgets you use and the things you do with them. I could recommend this game, but also be aware of the game's weird control layout that, yes, is dated, has a bit to get used to. Also, the problems that I mentioned before with the knockback and the lack of invincibility frames. That's a bigger issue that didn't affect my enjoyment of the game, so just be aware of those issues. The game is about 5 hours long if you choose to play it, and it won't take too much of your time, and also it's fairly cheap on the secondhand market. Thank you guys for watching. If this is your first time seeing me on YouTube, please like this video, comment on whatever games you want me to review, and of course subscribe. Thank you guys, stay safe, and have a good night.